Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for part two of the Aligning Your Values and Goals talk. And I are excited to keep bringing content during the if you have questions from last time, I'd love to hear them. So please feel free to drop those in the comment box or chime in if you're with us on Zoom. And let me make sure I introduce Ann Barwick, who's also here. She's going to be managing the chat box for any questions that come up. Ann Barwick is the co-founder of Makers Dream Makers. So just like I said, if you've got any comments or questions, drop them in the chat box and she'll be moderating that. Okay, so before we jump in, just a little recap of last week. If you weren't able to join us last week, hopefully you were able to watch the replay. So you could see a little bit about what the intro to this. So you learned about values and what role that they play in a goal setting conversation. Just to make sure we're all on the same page, though, when I talk about values, what I mean are the things that are most important to you. So values, most simply put, are the things that are most important to you. So hopefully you did your homework and have brought a list of those values with you tonight, because we're going to actually get into some practical application. I'm going to take you through a very condensed version of a coaching session where we would actually draw out your values and goals. And for that reason, you need a pen and paper. So you can certainly take notes digitally, but for this particular exercise, you need to be able to actually write out a few things, and we're going to do some drawing. So you've got to have a pen and paper for this. So go ahead and grab that if you don't have it already. And I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible, so I'll keep it rolling. This evening, we're going to be talking about, again, your values, really, and putting those down on paper. We're also going to be looking at your goals. And then how the two are aligned. So we will look at exactly what you're working for and the trajectory that you are on with your life right now. So let's get into it. So first, I wanted to just give a quick example of a client that I worked with a couple years ago. And this will hopefully illustrate what it looks like when your life and your goals, your values and your goals are aligned. So just a quick backstory on her. She was someone who had an amazing job. She earned a healthy paycheck. She was very well respected in her industry and pretty high up. She spent a lot of time at her office, but out of it, again, she had a pretty high status there within the company and the industry. She made a lot of money, and she had a really great life. She was very good at her job. And she was considering a promotion, which is how we started working together. She felt like that promotion just it wasn't really sitting right with her for whatever reason. So she wanted to talk about, what was going on there and why. So of course, first we looked at her values. And as she started to come up with those values, number one on her value list was family. She had a couple small kids, and for her, being involved with them this early in their life was something very important to her. Her number two value was community. It was very important for her that she felt like she was part of her community and gave back to her community. So for this reason, she wanted to be active and engaged in her community. So when we look at her promotion and what would happen if she were, to take that, the promotion was amazing. I mean, it comes with an even better, bigger paycheck, but it also required 50 even more, working late, at least 3 nights a week. And this is what happens when our goals and values become misaligned. So let's play this out. Once she gets that promotion, she will now have less time for family and community, which are the most important things to her. So you can see the disconnect. If my client were to work incredibly hard to land this incredible promotion, she would actually be farther away from the things that are most important to her. And even though it's an amazing promotion, it's an amazing opportunity, they always are, it will soon translate into more unhappiness, and there will be less of what matters most to her. So here I want you to really think about your life trajectory and how your life aligns with your values. So if you take a look at that list that you created, if your life is running parallel, so meaning your life trajectory is here and your values are here and they don't necessarily intersect, instead they're just running parallel from each other, what's happening in the middle? Typically, that's unfulfillment and feelings of unpurposefulness and even guilt. And the reason why you're feeling guilty in that space is because a lot of times we have this voice in our head that tells us we should be thankful for where we're at. We should just, keep grinding it out. Forget, any of that talk about, I wish I was here, or man, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. And the guilt starts to build up, but we start to suppress those feelings, and we justify. We're really good at justifying where we're at. And so we put off the pursuit of living our dreams and fulfilling your purpose and potential. And this is just one example of a ton of similar ones. A lot of people that I've worked with face the same kind of issue, whether it's, it could be packaged up differently, but at the core, it's the same thing. It happens to a lot of us. We end up, instead of honoring our values, we end up modifying our values by taking an opportunity, or we believe something someone else tells us about ourselves, or we choose to stay safe instead of taking a risk. And that sets us down a different path. And honestly, it becomes even harder once we find success, because success misinforms us. It becomes our identity, and we'll overly attach to a particular status that we've developed. Or we get lost in other people's agendas or opportunities as they come up, and we want to say yes, which is why it's so important for us to stay in touch with ourselves and to be honest with ourselves always and know what our values are, so that when we know what we want, we know when to say no to something that's not aligned with our values and will ultimately not give us what we really want in life. So I'm happy to say that this particular client, not only did she turn down the promotion, but she actually decided to demote. And from the outside perspective, I'm sure a lot of people thought she was crazy for doing that. But she would never go back to that old lifestyle, even with a bigger paycheck, the corner office, the status that she had developed. It wasn't worth it, because for her, she's home every night. She started a community initiative that she's very involved in and she loves. And for her, that is success. Success is subjective, right? When you know your values, you know what it'll take for you to feel successful too. So that's where I want to start tonight. I want you to go ahead and pull out your list of values that you created from last week's talk. And if you haven't done that, just go ahead and jot down your values, but I want you to do it in a particular way. So let me just pull up a quick example here of what I'd like for you to make. And that's just a really simple T-chart. So if you would just draw a line down the middle of your paper and a cross at the top like this. And on one side, just label that values. Just like this. Okay. So on the value side, I just want you to bullet point out, write out those values. Now, if you've already done this and you have a lot of values, while that is great, what I would really recommend is that you reduce the number of values to 7 max. If you have 5, that's probably a great number to work with. If you have 3, that's totally fine. Between 3 and 5 is a great number of values. So go ahead and write those down or prioritize them, whatever you need to do to come up with that list of an average of 5 values. And once you've written down your values, I won't stop too long here because you're prepared for this. But if this is something you haven't done, make sure that you keep coming back to this list and spend the time on this that it deserves. This is not something that you can quickly come up with, because knowing your values is really important. And it sometimes takes a lot of thought and soul searching to figure out, what are the things that are most important to me. So this is really not something that you can just quickly write down. And maybe it is, and hopefully it's that easy for you, but come back to this and take the time you need to come up with those values, and especially to prioritize your top 5 values. The next part of this are going to be goals. So on the other side of that T-chart, I want you to write a column for goals. So go ahead and take a couple minutes and write down your, let's just say your top 3 goals for right now, whatever those goals are, whether it's, for the remainder of 2020 or Q2 or whatever you're working on right now. Go ahead and write down your top 3 goals in that other column next to values. And I'll give you just a few minutes to do that, a few seconds. Okay, so hopefully you've got a good list of goals going here, and if you need to keep working, just tune me out and keep writing. The next thing we're going to do before we actually get started on the exercise, I want to ask you a couple questions about your goals to eliminate any goals that should not, in fact, be on this list. So I will ask you these questions, but I want you to think about them really quickly. So instead of spending a lot of time in your head here, a lot of this should come right from your heart. So those questions people ask and you have to, answer right away. Usually that's coming from our subconscious, which is the more honest version of ourselves without a filter. So I'd love for you to just quickly go down this list. When I ask you a question, just react. Don't give yourself time to justify or reason with any of these questions. So here we go. When you look at these goals, do you get fired up? And when I say that, I mean, do you get excited about these goals? So quickly go down your list of goals. And if there is one, or maybe there are more, when you're reading your goal, it does not evoke feelings of happiness or excitement or, anything good or positive. And if that's how you're feeling about a goal, don't try to justify it. Don't talk yourself into it. Cross it off your list. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, question 2. Again, taking a look at your goal list here. Are these goals something you definitely want? And the question here is you. So if you have any kind of should around these goals, so I should do this, or I should want this, or I should complete that, whatever. If the word should is coming up at all, then typically that means it is not coming from you. That goal is someone else's agenda for you almost all the time. So whenever you are looking at your goal list, go ahead and check it out again. Are any of these goals should goals? And if that's the case, mark those off too. Okay, so this is the final piece of this goal review here. What I want you to do, take a look at your goals. So starting with number 1 goal. When you complete that goal or in the process of completing that goal, take a look at your values column. What values will be supported or honored, or what value will you have whenever you complete or are working toward that goal? So here's what that'll look like. Take a goal. When you're looking at that goal, what I want you to do is draw a line from that goal to the value that it will support or the value that it will give you once that goal is completed. And it's oftentimes that one goal you could map to several different values. And I hope that's the case for you. Go ahead right now and map your goals to specific values. Yeah, and those of you that are just joining us, we're just making a simple T-chart that looks like this. On one side, we're writing our values, and the other side, we're writing our goals. And then we're going to be mapping our goals or the outcome of our goals to the values that they support. Okay, so those of you that are finished mapping your goals, you might be really surprised right here. A lot of times this is like a big aha moment for some people when they realize that none of their goals map to any of their values. And this is a huge bummer, right? Because at this point, we want to really ask the question of why. If you have a goal that does not align with a value, that's the question you need to ask yourself. Why is it important to you? What will you have when you accomplish this goal? And if it's something that's not on your values list, then why do you want it? Why are you spending your resources, money, time, etc., effort, working toward something that will not give you what's most important to you? So this is just a good time to check in with yourself if none of those values are attached to any of your goals. Ask yourself why. And if you're someone like me, who when I first created this exercise was like, I have no goals then. If that's the case, what do I do? So there are some of you that are going to have to start completely over. So the next question becomes, how do I come up with a goal? And this is a really easy process. I'm going to share that with you right now. If you're ever stuck with coming up with goals, so not just now, but in the future, whenever you're trying to come up with the goals continuously, because we want you to do this exercise pretty often, what you can do is simply work backward from your values to develop that goal. So for example, if my number one value is family, then I would think about things I could do or goals I could put in place to have more of that. So for example, something might be maybe becoming more organized. So I could actually leave the office at 5 p.m. and get home a bit earlier to spend more time with my family. Maybe I need to hire an assistant or be better about delegating. There are several things that I could do in order to put or be able to spend more time with my family, which is a value of mine. Let's say, for example, peace is a value of mine. Some of the things that I could do or examples of goals that I could put in place in order to have more peace might be, again, to organize my space to give me a sense of peace or order. Hopefully that makes sense. So just look at your goals, look at your values and figure out where in your life could you get more of that? And then what are some goals that you could create right now that would give you more of those values? Now, once all of your goals are supporting your values, if those goals, or actually I should say when those goals are accomplished, you'll actually be happy and fulfilled because you'll be getting the things that you care about and want the most out of this life. And that is why this exercise is incredibly important. So that was all for tonight. And next week, whenever we do the final piece of this seminar, I'm going to be showing you ways that you can protect these goals and how to make sure that we get everything out of your way so there's no reason or no excuse for you not to accomplish these goals. Okay, feel free to drop any questions in the comment box. And I will check that now. So let's see. Lindsay, you asked, could you give an example of a goal and how it would relate to a value? Lindsay, hopefully I touched on that. If still have that question, let's say, for example, I'll give you one of mine. One of my values is health. So I make sure that I create a goal that supports that value. So one of my goals is to work out, 4 times a week. And that supports that goal of health, making sure that I'm doing the things, moving my body so that I feel good. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me know if you have another question or if I can expand on that. Any other questions? Thank you, Jade. Thank you for being here. Well, guys, thank you for joining us tonight. Ann and I are excited to keep bringing this type of content to you. We hope that you find it helpful. Join us again next week, same time. And again, we'll be talking through ways to protect those goals and how to make sure that you actually achieve these goals. We'll get everything out of your way, no excuses, no obstacles. Look forward to seeing you next week. And thank you again for joining us.